Hey everyone, this is John Finari from the Sociology Department at Queens College. Today I'll be creating scatter graphs in Google Sheets and using the advanced edit options to make them look really nice. I have some data here. I have some student names and information about how much time they spent studying for an exam, how much sleep they got the night before an exam, and their exam score. I've also already calculated the Pearson correlation coefficient, so I already have an idea about how much of an effect and what type of effect these two independent variables, study time and sleep time, have on the independent variable, exam score. But I want to see what this looks like graphically. So I'm going to create a scatter graph. Now before I can create a scatter graph, I've got to select the data that I want included in that graph. And it's very important to select the data in the proper order. When creating scatter graphs, you have to highlight the values and the header for the independent variable first, and then the values in the header for the dependent variable. So the first scatter graph I want to create is a scatter graph that shows the association between study time and exam scores. So I'm going to highlight, starting with the header, study time, and down to the bottom of the values. That's my independent variable. Then I'm going to press the Control button on my keyboard and highlight the header and the values for my dependent variable, exam scores. Once I've done that, I go over here and I select Insert, and I choose Chart. Now Google is going to pick what chart it thinks you want. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. This time it hasn't selected a scatter graph, so I want to override Google's decision, and what I'm going to do is go here to this option in the middle, this tab that says Chart Types. And then I'm going to scroll down and look for the type of chart that I want. And there's my scatter graph. So I select Scatter, and you can see my scatter graph right here. Looks pretty nice. I'm going to hit Insert. So here's my scatter graph. First thing I want to do is resize it. I can just click over here on the border, shrink it, make it a little smaller, and then I'm also going to move it. I want to move it to the right of my data table. And keep resizing it till I like the size. There's my scatter graph. Now that's not a bad looking scatter graph, but I'm going to try to clean this up and make it look a little pretty. In fact, one thing you'll notice is that there's no label for the x-axis, although there is a label for the y-axis, and the title's kind of lame. So the way we make changes to this graph is we right-click and we choose the Advanced Edit option. In the Advanced Edit options, you can make a lot of different changes to this graph. You can move or delete the legend, change the colors, change the color of the grid, the background color. There are a lot of options. So we're going to go through and look at some of these options. So the first section here, where all these options are changed here on the left, and as you make changes on the left, you'll actually see the changes appear on the right. So starting at the very top where it says chart, we've got a chart title. Well, I want to change that title to study time and exam scores. For this table, I don't really think we need a legend. You see the legend here tells us that the blue dot is an exam score. Well, we already know that these are exam scores. Some graphs, the legend is important. In this graph, it's not really important. So we're going to select none, and the legends will disappear. We can also change the font color of the title. I'm going to make that title blue. We can change the background color over here where it says background. I'm going to make it a light gray color. If I continue to scroll down a little, we'll get to the axes, and I have the ability to change which axis I want to edit First, I'm going to edit the horizontal axis. So I need to give this axis a title because there's nothing down here. So the horizontal axis is my x-axis, and the independent variable is across the x-axis. So we want to give the name of the independent variable. Study time. And I can change the color of the font. I'm going to make that color purple. And I can also change the grid lines. And you'll notice here that they're kind of light, and I've given the background a gray color, so it's hard to see the grid lines. So I'm going to change the grid line colors to dark black. Once I'm happy with what the x-axis looks like, go back here where it says axis and change that to left vertical axis. That's my y-axis. Well, it has a title, study time, and that's a good title. I'm going to leave the... Actually, I'm going to change the font color to red. You'll see that the color changes here. And I also want to change the grid lines to black again. So now I have a purple title for my x-axis, a red title for my y-axis, except my y-axis has the wrong name. That's better. Now I have the correct x and y axes labeled with different colors. Once I'm happy with my x and y axis, I'm going to scroll down a little further to where it says series. It gives me the option to change the colors. Well, I can change the colors of these little dots. So I'm going to change them to purple. I can also change the size of those dots and make them a little bigger. I can even change the shape of those dots from circles to stars. Last thing I want to do here is I want to insert a trend line. So on the bottom here that says trend line, then currently it says none. I'm going to change that to linear trend line. And now you can see the trend line through my scattergram. Once I'm happy with my changes, I select Update. And now I have a scatter graph that shows the association between study time and exam scores. We already know that there's a strong positive association between these two variables, and that scatter graph further demonstrates that there is a positive association because the line is going up as it moves from the left to the right, and the amount of scatter on the graph is minimal. And when I say scatter, I'm referring to how far the dots are, or the data points are, from the line. Now let's do that again with sleep time and exam score. So first, again, I have to select the header and the data values for my independent variable, sleep time. Then I have to hit Control on my keyboard, hold that down while I select the header and the data values for my dependent variable, exam score. Then I go to Insert and Chart. Again, it hasn't selected a scatter graph for me, so I'm going to ask it to give me a list of chart types. Scroll down until I see scatter. Hit Insert. And now I have this scattergram. I'm going to resize this scatter graph. You might notice that I use the term scattergram and scattergraph interchangeably. There are a lot of different terms for this type of graph. Some people call them scatter graphs, some people call them scatter plots, and some people refer to them as scattergrams. I'm going to go into the advanced options right-click, select Advanced Edit, and I'm going to make some changes to this chart. Once I'm satisfied with the edits that I've made to the chart, I select Update, and now I have a scatter graph that shows the association between sleep time and exam scores. This association is also a positive association. We can see that the bar moves up as you move from the left to the right. But we can also see that the strength is not as strong as study time and exam scores because there's more scatter on this graph. And by scatter, I'm referring to how spread out the dots are from the line. So if I was just looking at these two scattergrams, I would notice that they're both showing positive associations, but this one shows less scatter. All the data points are very close to the line, where this one shows more scatter. The data points, several data points, are very far from the line. So here you have a data table, a correlation coefficient for each of the two associations, and a scatter graph for each of the two associations. And these are the tools that you can use to measure bivariate associations when you're working with two quantitative variables.